de Monterrey and APRU Fellowship Program. It's a true pleasure to see all our students, colleagues from all fellow universities and our key partners present and eager to continue with our commitment to this fellowship where we are all interested in the same goal and strengthening the cooperation of universities and companies in the field of esports, making it possible the creation of future leaders of the esports industry. Companies of the esports industry are key partners for universities in this fellowship due to their tremendous expertise. So without further ado, I pass on the leadership of this second workshop organized by Cyberport with the theme sponsorships in esports to Ray Ng, the esports manager at Cyberport. Ray is responsible for the day-to-day operation of the esports cluster, and his focus is on facilitating the local esports industry and establishing the esports ecosystem in Hong Kong. So please, Ray, could you share us your expertise and welcome everybody?
Sure, thank you. Welcome everyone who's joining today's session. So I'm Ray. I'm currently working at Cyberport as an esports manager, and like we said, that I'm facilitating the Hong Kong industry esports development. And in today's session, I'm joined by Sean here, and Sean is actually the CEO of Talon Esports and also our Cyberport incubator. I pass the time to Sean first, and then to share more about Talon Esports and the tips and tricks about the sponsorship in the esports industry.
Cool. Go through the slides. Okay, cool. So thank you everyone for taking the time to attend the session today. Super excited to be here, and apologies about a little bit late, just been having some troubles this morning, but finally here. You know, we've been part of Cyberport as part of the incubator program from the very start, and it's been very helpful in order for us to kind of develop and build throughout Hong Kong. Esports is a completely brand new sector, and obviously because of that, there's obviously I feel sort of a lack of information around sort of how the industry comes together. So today it's really fun for me to be here to sort of work with you guys on developing how sponsorship works, which is one of the major parts of esports. And we've been very fortunate that given our sort of footprint throughout Asia Pacific, that we've been able to work with a number of major brands here in Hong Kong, as well as major brands within the region. So, you know, here in Hong Kong, some of the brands you guys may be aware of include Mox, which is one of the digital banks here in Hong Kong, partnered with Standard Chartered and PCCW. CSL is another brand. We also work with Cyberport. We work with some brands like Twitch and Lenovo in the past, and some larger regional brands within the broader region, such as KFC and DTAC and you know, Nike are some of the brands that we work with. So super excited to share how we've sort of established those relationships and how we kind of work with pitching these brands on sort of what are the key values that esports has and what are the key values that we have. Just to talk a little bit about what we are. So we are one of the premier brands in Asia Pacific, unprecedented 22 championships in 4 years. We are also a lifestyle brand running leagues to bedazzle a global audience and incorporating academies as part of a diversified esports platform. So we'd like to treat ourselves more as an esports platform, not just a team. And because of that, we've been able to sort of work with a whole bunch of different brands throughout the region. Our objective is to build one of the leading Pan-Asian esports platforms, and what I mean by that is to have presence from Japan all the way down to Australia, and build one of the first esports teams that has multiple sort of games coverage throughout the market, and that includes, you know, currently we're in Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Thailand, and the objective is to build out throughout the rest of Southeast Asia, including places like Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam as well. Sort of 4 key business pillars that we have. Firstly, we have championship winning teams and academies, which are pretty much focused around the teams that we own and the esports components of that. Lifestyle and collaboration, so we do a lot of clothing and merchandise. Recently, we launched a merchandise line, and we've done a lot of work with brands such as Nike and a lot of different collaborations this year, which I can talk about. We have a dedicated creative studio here in Hong Kong and all our markets, which is really much focused around the production of esports content, storytelling on behalf of the brands that we work with, but also for brands which aren't exactly associated with Talon as well. And lastly, we have the IP for 2 of the key sort of new esports titles within the region, those being Valorant for Hong Kong, Taiwan, and also Wild Rift, which you guys will be pitching today as well. Yeah. Cool. Do you want me to go through this whole deck or?
I'll just go for the whole deck.
Okay, cool. So some of the major brands that we work with, firstly, for our League of Legends team that we house here in Hong Kong, PSG, if you guys probably are well aware of, one of the world's largest football teams, is one of our major partners. Our team is actually called PSG Talent, and that's been very successful for us and something that we were able to establish last year. Also, some of the other brands, as I mentioned, DTAC is one of the 3rd largest telco in Thailand. KFC, you guys are all well aware of, sort of the fast food chain. Nike, we work very closely with here in Hong Kong, and all our actually League of Legends players are seeded as Nike athletes here in Hong Kong as well, which is something that's very rare. Grab is another brand that we've worked with in Thailand. You guys may know it's a super app. You can deliver food. It's for taxi deliveries. They also do a whole bunch of different things similar to sort of WeChat. Lenovo here in Hong Kong, Twitch here in Hong Kong, Taiwan. Recaro is, if you guys aren't aware, most of your airline seats are actually done by Recaro. If you're a fan of racing as well, they've also done seats, but they've moved into esports. MSI and Carnival are some additional brands that we've worked with as well. So just to talk a little bit about PSG Talent and sort of the game of League of Legends and the league that we play in, the PCS. League of Legends is one of the most, the largest esports, 80 million active players on a monthly basis. During Worlds of 2020, it was over 1 billion hours watched. Just shows you sort of the scale. And I think that's something to pay attention of a lot of these esports is the viewership and how many people are actually watching it. During the league, the most finals, they had 46 million peak concurrent viewers, which is an insane number. Talking a little bit about the PCS, we had, for the summer season, about 3.5 million hours watched, a peak viewership of 168,000, which if you think about is a very large number. And then we have 8 broadcast channels and then 3 languages, so those being Chinese, English, and Thai. Just to talk a little bit about our social platforms. So we like to talk a little bit about sort of what we represent. So we like, PSG Talent is one of the most winningest teams, I guess, in the PCS. We've won the Spring Championship 2020, won the Mid-Season Showdown, finished 2nd during summer, and also was one of the top 10 teams at Worlds. The objective this year is to really push at that. Currently, we're at MSI in Iceland. If you guys are League of Legends fans, currently preparing for that as well. A lot of the sponsorship stuff, what brands do care about is how big is our social media following. So as of when this deck was done, it's about 1.2 million. That's up now, I think, to close to like 2.2. How many monthly impressions we get, that's really important, and also how many viewers we get during our broadcast for the PCS and major tournaments as well. Demographics is also important, so we have a breakdown of gender, a breakdown of age, and also countries. So a lot of brands ask for sort of what is the average age of your fan base, where are they located, are they male or female? These are the type of questions that a lot of our sponsors are actually asking for as well. Can I click next? So we also just share a little bit about sort of the structure of the season. So 4 key tournaments that we like to confirm. Firstly, the 2 domestic tournaments, those being Spring Split and Summer Split. And then that is gapped in the middle between 2 international events, which is MSI. Currently, we're competing in Iceland, and then Worlds end of this year, which will be in mainland China. But this is important so that the brands understand sort of how our leagues are structured, because it's slightly different from traditional sport where you may have a league that runs throughout the year. Esports tends to have multiple splits or multiple formats, so explaining to the brand sort of how it's structured is quite important. And then lastly, just talking a little bit about partnership offerings and what exactly we can provide for brands, because obviously every brand has different needs and requirements. Obviously IP and association. So if you want to stick the PSG Talent logo onto a chip or a razor or a shampoo, we provide that, right? Jersey branding is something that's obviously something very straightforward that most of us understand. So if you look at any football club, you always have jersey branding. So if you look at our jersey, you've got Twitch here and a whole bunch of other brands we're talking to now that will be added onto the jersey eventually. We do branded content, and that is really about telling the story on behalf of a brand or associating something with esports or our team with a particular brand. Logo and product exposure. So a lot of our photography, we include shots of food or the brands that we operate with. Talon merchandise is an exclusive collaboration that we can do across multiple brands. And lastly, unique experiences. So for example, if a brand like MasterCard wants to give you a priceless moment, so one thing that we could do is, let's say you want to do an interview with all the players at MSI at Iceland at the moment, that's what we would classify as a unique experience. So at a high level, that's kind of like an example of one of the sponsorship decks for PSG Talent, which is our League of Legends team, that are the sort of the key teaser or key bits of information that we want to share with brands. And obviously we go into a lot more detail on inventory lists and specifics of our audience, but at a high level, these are kind of the key things that we tackle and try to demonstrate to brands, and also just for them to understand the value of sort of where this esports space is at. Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Sean, for sharing the background of Talon Esports and also the fantastic partnership that you've been working with. And let's start today the panel discussion. So today's topic that we are focusing on is really how to secure esports sponsorship for any organization, right? And for the first question, so you've been partnering with PSG, right? One of the sport leading team in the world. And how do you conduct with them and secure the partnership with them?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit of luck, I'll be honest with everyone, when we got with PSG. It was a byproduct of one of the publishers helping us make an introduction to PSG. And actually, if you guys don't know, like Garena is the main distributor for League of Legends in Hong Kong and Taiwan. And so we were very fortunate that they made the Garena team in Thailand for another game called Arena of Valor, introduced us to PSG because they were in Thailand at that time. When we were speaking to PSG, I think one of the key things that we really connected on was the fact that we were very focused on winning. And that was one of our core values. And we were very focused on delivering championships. And I think it's really important when you speak with brands to understand what they stand for and what they want to represent and what they want to achieve, and aligning that. And you can't force it, right? So if your company is not exactly a perfect fit for a particular brand, then you can't exactly always force it. So, if a brand represents a certain set of values and you don't exactly have the same, sometimes it's best not to force that particular sponsorship because in the long term, it's probably not going to help you that much. But the great thing about PSG, if you guys don't know, is PSG is very, very dedicated to winning, right? They are in the process of building one of the largest sports brands. That's what they want to do. And they win domestically in France nearly every single year. This year, I think, it's quite tight, but they still have a good chance. And their objective is to win a first Champions League for their club, right? That has always been the focus. And because of that, they've invested very heavily into the commercial side of the business in order for them to have the money and the sustainability to bring in players like Neymar, Mbappe, and have the world's best players there. For us, it's very similar. The PCS region has been, as of the last couple of years, done poorly at Worlds at MSI. And so therefore our mindset was to come in to change that and to win domestically, of course, but then go to Worlds, go to MSI, and not finish in group stage, but actually get to the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals. And the end objective for us is to actually win Worlds in the next 5 years, right? That's our objective. And so that's the focus for our organization. And PSG really liked that. And because of that, we had a very clear alignment. Also, I think culturally, we got along really well with their senior management team. I think that's also really important to make sure that, when you talk to brands that it's a good fit. And so that's probably one of the key factors, was just the core values and mindset and the objectives that the brand wanted to achieve with PSG. And I guess that's probably one of the reasons why they picked us over, let's say, a Team Marchi or a J Team. We had that ambition, we had that focus, and also I think we also have a slightly two-way view. Of course, we focus on Hong Kong and Taiwan fans, but also, we also have a focus on building an international brand by going to Worlds and MSI. And I think all those things are lined up very nicely. And because they're lined up nicely, it was actually a really good partnership with PSG. And, that's allowed us to kind of develop it further. So that was kind of the main thing, is the core values and mindset of the brand, and us being able to align on that was really important.
Cool. Awesome. Congratulations again for the PSG team qualifying for MSI.
Thank you.
And hope they get a good achievement and come back to Hong Kong.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. So a follow-up question is, what is the difference between when you are approaching sponsors for sponsorship for teams or approaching them for a tournament? I think it's a different kind of like metrics and things that are actually looking for. So what's the difference between the two of them?
Yeah. So for a lot of brands, every brand is looking to achieve something different, right? And I think one of the key things that we really need to focus on when we're talking to brands is around understanding what their understanding of the esports space is, and also what their risk appetite is, right? I think generally it's so very new, particularly teams, that many brands, even here in Hong Kong, don't really understand how sponsoring a team will help them elevate or grow their brand, right? So I still think there's like an education process here in Hong Kong that needs to happen, and we've been trying to facilitate that, and I think that will change over time for sure. And therefore, with the team versus a league, for example, for like Valorant or Wild Rift, they're very different components, right? So for a team, you can have content that is running throughout the week, right? You have the competitions on the weekend, and you have, a whole bunch of activations that you can run pretty much 7 days a week, right? And that conversation around the team is happening all the time because we have content, we have sort of different, videos and bits and pieces that go out during the week. Now for the league, it's slightly different. And I think honestly for the leagues, the way we've done it, we found that it's a lot easier for brands to understand here in Hong Kong how a league works, right? Because it's like sponsoring, the Premier League on Now TV, because there are certain gaps inside the game where, I can put a logo here, I can put a logo here, I can put a logo here, and I can calculate the media value very easily, right? Or the marketing reach or the impressions that I get. But for an esports team, it's a little bit more complicated because there are so many inventory items that are available. There's something on the jersey, there's branded content, there's a player's streams, there's a YouTube video introduction, there's all the banners across social media websites, blah, blah, blah. And often for a lot of brands, it's quite overwhelming, and also they don't know how quite to activate when I invest into a particular team. Versus a league, it's a bit more easier because you could say, if you look at our Wild Rift League, which is sponsored by Mox, it's very clear and straightforward, right? Icon Series Hong Kong presented by Mox, right? And every time that logo appears on broadcast, that Mox logo appears, and there's a lot of activations inside the game that we can link back to Mox, which is a bank. So for example, if you guys know a little bit about League of Legends, the gold graph difference is something that's very important within League. Mox Baron power play, these are all examples of key gold moments inside the game. And for them, it was just a lot easier to understand from a team versus a league. So therefore they started with a league. Now, some brands like DTAC and KFC, when we spoke to them, are just more interested with the team. And the reason why they're interested with the team is just the fans are slightly different. We're quite sticky to Talon because they are fans of Talon, right? Whereas the league might be a very broad base because you have such a large group of people who are watching the league, right? It's not just a fan of one team, but a fan of an entire league or an entire game. And so therefore, it just really comes down to preferences of the brand and what they're looking to achieve. But I think for many people, it's a lot easier to understand for brands to start off with when they're entering esports on the league side, because it's almost like a TV sponsorship anyway, because it's all about working with the brand assets inside the broadcast. And it's very clear around sort of how it's structured and how they can sponsor the league and how that can help them with their specific objectives.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up question is that because there's different aspect of the brands who want to sponsor a team or a tournament. So how do you identify a brand whether they want to sponsor a tournament rather than team, or they want to sponsor a team than tournament, or you are pitching them both aspects at the same time?
Yeah. So our process, how it works here at PSG Talent is that, and Talent in general, is that we would identify specific categories that we feel like are something that the team will need or a sponsor would make a lot of sense for. So for example, as an esports company, we always need PCs and monitors, right? So we would always go and pitch a brand in order to help us with the hardware requirements in a particular market. So here in Hong Kong, we're very fortunate that Aorus and Gigabyte has helped us with computer gear. And so when we pitch them, we can ask them like, what do you prefer? And we usually pitch everything, right? We pitch the PSG Talent team, we pitch Korea, we pitch Thailand, we pitch Taiwan, and we also pitch the events that we have. And generally, it's surprisingly that the brands will tell us usually straight away from the first meeting what they prefer. And some brands are very much focused on leagues because they want to capture the whole audience of a particular game. Some brands are very focused on just doing a particular team because they want to access the fans of that particular team. Because we have a split, like in Thailand, our social media following is this big, in Taiwan it's this big, in Hong Kong it's this big, and then in Korea it's this big. And so it's a breakdown based on what their requirements are. And the complexity about we have here in Asia is that obviously we have a very many markets that make up Asia Pacific, and so a lot of the brand budgets are split, and each brand manager has a different mindset of how they want to localize it. So for example, Logitech in Thailand has a very different mindset to Logitech here in Hong Kong of what they want to achieve. So to be honest with you guys, it really is about going out, having those conversations. It's about going out and speaking with, identifying categories. And we have a gentleman named Ringo who's based in the UK, actually could have attended today, but due to the time difference, it's a bit hard for him. But he used to be ex-Barcelona, and he has a large book of relationships that exist already from his time at Barcelona. And because of that, he's been able to reapproach those brands and say, hey, I'm in esports now. What do you guys think about the space? And then because they have good relationships, he can ask very quickly, are you interested in leagues? Are you interested in teams? And then reorientate that conversation very quickly towards particular moments. So it does vary. There is no sort of key specific answer, and it really is about speaking to as many brands and then them telling us I prefer this, I prefer that. Yeah.
Cool. So in summary, I think connections and network is super important when you are pushing for sponsorship, or no matter for teams or for leagues. But what is your advice if some people are new to the industry and they want to get connected to these kind of brands and pitching them for potential sponsorship for a tournament? So what is your advice on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just to be very clear about what the tournament or what the team is looking to achieve or what the objective is, right? I think that's really important. Many of these marketing managers don't have a lot of time. They get pitched a lot of different ideas. And so to be very specific and clear about what you're looking to achieve, right? You can't go in there going, I think it's this or I think it's that. I think if you're going to be a team, then make sure you have very clear values of what the team represents, the branding. Make sure you have a nice deck, beautiful deck together, because marketing is marketing, right? You need to be able to
you have a very beautiful deck.
So it's really important to focus on that, right? Because if you have brand values and the brand guidelines, then you can talk to brands and tell them, hey, this is what we're looking to achieve. Because for many brands, like major brands, they want to work with successful companies that look like they have obviously very clear around the messaging and the look and the feel of the brand, right? I think that's really important. Secondly, it's just to understand your audience. I think it's really important to be very clear with brands about what how big is your audience and how you reach them, and what are the different ways that you engage with them, whether it be a league or a team, because having that data is really important. And the good thing is that most of the social media platforms that if you are building upon, whether it be a Facebook, a Twitter, a YouTube, or a Twitch, all that data is readily available to consolidate that and be very clear to the brand around these are the things that we have, right? And then lastly, is just to be very also clear about the inventory items that you're providing for them. So for example, are you giving them a spot on the shoulder? Are you giving them a spot on the sleeve? Are you going to give them a spot on the front? How much is each one worth? What is the media value tied to that? How long is that going for? Is it for a year? Is it for 6 months? And to be very clear and specific about this and have all this data prepared before you talk to them. Lastly, I think the key thing is just to go and network, right? I think a lot of this branding stuff, there is no like here's a list of brands, go contact them, because most of those marketing managers probably don't want to, well, not that they don't want to be contacted, but they probably get flooded with a lot of information. So it's important to, have that relationship. Unfortunately, just that's the way it is. And I think for most business these days, you have to go out and network, right? It's really important. And so if you're able to do that, then that's really important. But I would suggest, even if you have a friend or a friend of a friend who works at a marketing division inside a company, just to go have that initial conversation, really understand what they're looking to achieve, and making sure that you have all your data ready and you're very clear about what you're offering, and give it to them. And also just be clear around what esports from a team and a league perspective provides, right? Because one of the key things that the reason why brands invest in esports is because the young, engaged demographic and fan base, right? They want to be able to tap this 15 to 35-year-old male or females who are interested in gaming. And so therefore having that clear understanding of the value that you provide, being very clear about what you're providing them and the benefits and the audience and the reach that you provide is really, really important. So I think those are some of the key things that really need to focus on. There's no direct answer. I really don't know, because every single brand we talk to, they often ask for different things and need different things. You need to be slightly flexible, but at the same time, you need to have all the information in one place, be very clear and concise. And then once you have that it's at least put you on a pedestal for success. And sometimes it's about timing as well, right? Some brands want to do something immediately, and it just makes sense. And so that's kind of how it comes together. But a little bit of luck, a lot of hard work, and I think that's kind of the main things that I wanted to sort of emphasize. Yeah.
Wow, that's very good advice. Because Sean and I have been know each other for many years. That I was working at Blizzard before. And Sean was working on the Overwatch team, contender series there. So I open the time for the floor, since there's a Sean here to answer some of your questions. Like if you have any questions about esports sponsorship or anything about Talent Esports, feel free to raise your hand, and then let you ask the questions. Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matthew from the University of Washington. I had a question for Sean. You mentioned that a lot of companies don't understand how sponsoring an esports team elevates their brand. In your opinion, how does sponsoring an esports team elevate their brand, and what do companies have to gain by sponsoring an esports team?
Yeah, great question, Matthew, mate. So I think firstly, one of the main reasons why many brands sponsor esports is to get access to a particular demographic, which is increasingly harder and harder to reach. And that demographic is this sort of, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds up to 25, 30-year-old male and females that are traditionally, just very, very hard to hit from a traditional marketing perspective. And what I mean by that is they're not spending time watching scheduled TV, listening to the radio, reading a magazine, looking at ads, or even online. They might even have a web browser that's blocking particular ads on websites as well, right? So increasingly they're becoming a lot harder to hit, and therefore one of the key areas that has allowed for many brands to access this young particular demographic is esports. And the key difference is, let's say for a team, is that that is very powerful. Firstly is just the level of engagement and excitement that the fans have to a particular team, right? So even if you don't use us as an example, like T1 in Korea, right? Probably you guys know League of Legends, one of the most storied teams, having won multiple world titles and MSIs and LCK championships. The stickiness of those fans is incredibly powerful, and that with the brand association of T1 allows them to introduce them to a brand new audience that is particularly unique and also very hard to access. And I use an example, Hana Bank, for example, recently sponsored T1. Hana is one of Korea's largest retail banks. And a lot of the thinking around for Hana was that their average customer is probably close to like 40s or 50s. And they are figuring out ways how they can reorientate the brand to look more, I guess, favorable towards younger people, and also build an awareness and audience around that as well. And so they sponsored T1. They want to be associated with Faker and success of T1, even though they haven't been doing so well. but they opened up a brand new specific demographic that's heavily engaged in T1. And the content that T1 produces with HANA allows them to build a brand association and affiliation with that brand, and a coolness factor, I guess, that T1 has, and the success of performance. And that's what's driven sort of that interest there. And that's why brands are focused around that. It's just, to go back to the first part of the question around why is it difficult, it's just because of the fact that esports teams are still relatively new. I think, getting marketing professionals who also understand the space and are able to talk the language to the brands, because marketing directors and marketing executives and marketing managers are looking for specific ways in which they're seeing value. And because for them, they look at an investment as well, right? If I'm going to invest 100,000, 200,000 into your team or a particular event, what am I getting back in return? And so often that education, what I mean by that is from our perspective is how we talk to brands, and also for the brands to understand the value that they get from associating with esports teams. And I think it's a two-way street, but I think definitely, the key factor for me is the way that we've really seen it talking to brands is just the demographic and the fan base, and also just this audience that is available to these particular brands. Like if T1 goes to Worlds or we go to MSI, and that audience is, millions of people online, for a brand to be able to reach that young audience globally or even domestically, it's quite hard. And the esports team gives them direct access to a very passionate fan base that are very heavily engaged, which is something that they value a lot. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for the detailed answers. And any other questions from the floor?
Hi, hi Sean. So I'm Sean from NUS, so National University of Singapore.
Hey, Sean.
Hi, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
how you doing,
great.
man?
Yeah, so I'm currently the president of the esports club there. So I was actually wondering, with regards to your previous response, do you have any specific advice you can give us when we are like talking to our school administrations about how we can approach companies or sponsorships, or like what's the school's stake in approaching sponsorships for esports?
So your question is, what's the sort of strategies around how to approach brands? Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, especially for like in the university context.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So actually for the university context, I think it's really powerful for you guys because a lot of the brands are very much focused on collegiate and university leagues, right? Because there's a very strong sense of community, and having brand associations a lot earlier at the university level is really important. So if you look at a lot of the brands that we talk to here in Hong Kong, Lenovo was like, hey, you guys do anything within collegiate or university, we'd be very keen, right? And it's the same with the leagues that we operate in for Wild Rift here in Hong Kong. The two brands that we work with, Mox and CSL, are very, very much tied into the collegiate side of things. I think the key thing is on the collegiate side is to, if you're organizing tournaments there, it's just to be, once again, similar things that I mentioned before, it's really important to be structured around what the tournament is, and what you're looking to achieve with it, right? So if it's a League of Legends tournament within NUS, like how is it structured, how the team's broken, what's the format of it, that's really, really important. And secondly, just in regards to sort of how you're going to give the brand access to the audience that is going to be either playing the game or also watching the game as well, right? So if that tournament is broadcast, for example, then you need to explain to them, where are the moments that you can help them elevate or share their branding in front of the audience, right? So if you watch a typical League of Legends broadcast, you guys are probably well aware, let's say in the LCS in the US, you have the Red Bull power play, Baron power play, right? That's an example of a branding moment that you can put inside your broadcast that you could sell to a particular brand. So let's say you're approaching Red Bull in Singapore, you can just basically copy that concept because someone's already come up with that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then basically say, hey, every time a team kills Baron and we calculate the gold difference or the Baron buff that they get for that period of time, you can provide that. And so I think it's really important just to go through and research all the different tournaments that are available at the professional level or even at the amateur level and study very closely where branding is appearing inside that particular broadcast and taking notes and then putting that down on the inventory list and providing it to brands and saying, okay, like if you're going to sponsor this league that we're going to run, this is the format, this is how long we're running it, this is where we're broadcasting it, this is the expected audience and demographics of the audience that's going to be watching it, and here are the specific branded moments that we feel are relevant to your brand and that you can access. And so something like that is really, really important. if Sean, if you want to contact me afterwards and have a deck on how we do, say, league sponsorships and things like that, I can send something very generic to you. And also, I think it's just definitely worthwhile taking notes and looking around the world around how collegiate scenes are run, right? I think Overwatch Contenders is a really good example. In the US, they have a collegiate league there, which they run through multiple universities in the US, and how like basically just watching one of those broadcasts and just taking notes of when branding is appearing, right? Transitions, when the casters are talking, these are all examples of moments. And I think, definitely watching any of the League of Legends broadcasts, and I think MSI coming up, there's a ton of brands, Red Bull, Spotify, Secret Lab, these are all brands that are going to be there. So watch one of those broadcasts, take notes, and then see if you can apply that to your local league. Now, if your league is not broadcast, let's say at the university level, that's fine too. If it's a physical event that you're having, then providing some of the branding, like stands or particular areas that you can provide is really good. And I think most of the brands, like for example, if you went to Red Bull in Singapore and said, hey, I'm running a collegiate league in the NUS, I'm sure they would give you an infinite supply of Red Bull and also have the team come down and promote it. But I think it's really just about structuring your deck, being very clear about what you're providing them, the value you're providing them, the audience that you're giving them, and then just explaining that in a very concise manner. And then that should set you up for that. Now, when it comes to talking to brands, like I'm not sure how Ringo does it, but I think a lot of the time LinkedIn is definitely a very powerful tool. I think that's something that you guys should all consider. LinkedIn Gold is really, really good in a sense that, you have those credits, you can email brands. And I think generally for the collegiate level, because it's the grassroots and you're building up, that is actually very powerful for a lot of brands, and those brands actually want access to that collegiate side. So, similar to sort of what the deck we've got here today, and I can also send through later to everyone if it's useful, a league sponsorship deck, like how we sell league sponsorships for for Valorant or for like Wild Rift. That would also be something that you can reference upon, but I definitely do your homework, watch broadcasts and just pay attention to branding moments, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel a lot of the times. I think Riot has done a fantastic job in the LEC, the LCS and the LCK, even the LPL or the PCS, if you watch it within our region, around how they brand it. And you can actually just almost copy it in a sense, and then put that together in your own mindset and just show the brands like, hey, this is what we can provide. And that's how we're doing it as well. Yeah.
Wow.
Hope that answers your question, Sean.
Sure. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. Especially the LinkedIn point, it really checks on like what I learned in business school. Just that, like, when it comes to the initial point of contact, I think one of the difficulties I always face is, the initial stage, like getting into contact with a marketing executive or a point of authority there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just be consistent, be persistent. I think often a lot of the times, when you're on LinkedIn, be very concise about the message that you're sending, be honest, and just explain to them what you're looking to achieve. I think if there's always a website or something that they can reference to quickly look at is really important. And also it's just check within your own network. Do you have any friends or family that have, some contacts in marketing as well? But if you're in Singapore, of course, you can also reach out to me as well. We have a pretty large network of brands that we work with throughout the region. So if you need any help as well, anyone within at least APAC, I can help you guys out. So feel free. You can look up my LinkedIn, just shoot me a message and I can see how I can help you guys out, at least for our initial conversation. And then, just the main thing is just be prepared when you talk to them, because obviously time is of essence for many sort of marketing managers and directors. And so being very clear and concise on what you want to achieve and what you want from them and what you're going to offer them is actually one of the key things to just be prepared before you go out and start reaching out to these brands. Yeah.
Awesome. A very clear answer from Sean to Sean. And because of the time limit, we'll open up one last question from Matt. Matt, you'll open your mic and.
Yeah. So Sean, first off, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. It was really, really, really good. And you are so intelligent, combined so many of my passions. I'm not a student. I'm actually on the university side. I'm with UBC in Vancouver, and my actual day-to-day is sponsorship and, esports combined now, which is fantastic. I guess the question I have for you, so there are two questions. So one, as it pertains to valuation, you mentioned about the media impressions and absolutely, you get some very impressive numbers when you crunch that. But as it pertains to how you value your assets and how you value your packages, what's a typical range and how do you go about that?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, the way it generally works within traditional sports is Nielsen has a data calculator, right? And it's actually quite expensive if you want to do it, but they can actually give you a breakdown of how much the media value is worth based on a particular formula or calculation. Now, in the marketing world, Nielsen is considered the standard. If you have a Premier League, you have a Premier League, you stick a logo and it's not a Coca-Cola stat. 20 times within 90 minutes. They can actually calculate on average how much that value is. And of course, obviously for a lot of students and even startup esports teams, that's pretty unreasonable because the cost that Nielsen charge, it is quite high, but obviously that's the marketing standard. Now, for us, what we do is we have a tool called Caviar.io. I recommend you guys can check it out. It's a lot cheaper than Nielsen's, but they also are able to do with artificial intelligence. Every time I post something, every time we host a video, every tournament that we go to, we basically give them all the brands that are associated with us, and that tool is actually able to calculate the media value of everything that we do, and then we base our pricing off that. Because I think then it's anchored off something that's real, then it's anchored off something that a brand can say, okay, based on this report from a particular brand, because Nielsen's not the only provider for this. There are actually a lot of other data providers that calculate impressions that we can say, hey, based on this, this is worth how much it is. Now, another part of our calculation is also the work effort required for our media team to produce particular assets. So for example, let's say, we sign Monster Energy drink, and we want to produce, they want us to produce 13 videos throughout the year based off a branded series of something with our team. Now, here in Hong Kong, if we said, okay, if we need to produce, 13 5-minute videos, how much is that going to cost for us to do with our team? And then also add that up onto the value of certain things. Because there is no hard and fast rule, I think, with the particular value right now, but a lot of our sort of conversations are driven off Caviar and then based off historical data of our tournaments and the travels that we've gone to, and we've collected all of that over, let's say, a year, and we say based off the front of shirt exposure or here or the sleeve of the rough calculations of this tool, we can say it's worth this much. Now, in regards to specific dollar costs, I think it varies market to market. We have sponsorships as low as 30, 40, 50,000 US for 12 months, and they can go up to in the hundreds and thousands, right? So it really just depends on the exposure on the jersey, the name, like particular rights. So for example, in Thailand, our team is actually called DTAC Talent. We sold the naming rights of our team to DTAC. League of Legends is the same, right? We're called PSG Talent as well. So we just tier the inventory, and we've been able to collect all that data via Caviar, and we've been using that tool for a very long time, and that actually helps us calculate the media value based on the impressions. We link all our social media into this tool. It's an AI-driven tool that automatically just reads every single broadcast, every single piece of content, every single piece of video that we put out, and then attaches the media value based on the audience data that both Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, all the content platforms that we have that are publicly available, and or us basically providing that data to Caviar and then calculating it. So that's kind of how we do it. We try to be more scientific. I think in some cases, for certain brands, it might be a finger in the air type thing, which is, to sound crudely, it is a certain case in certain, definitely is, but we've tried to make it much more scientific simply because of the fact that if I bring a brand in and we give them, $1 million worth of media value and they pay 50,000 for it, when we have the conversation when we renew the year after, we can actually say, hey, this is a lot easier. Hey, even if you pay double or triple what you paid, our social media is still growing, the league is still growing, the audience is still growing, so therefore the value for them is good. And that's also good for the marketing managers on the other side, because when they present that to their boss, they say, I've spent 50,000, but the media value that I got was actually $1 million. That actually is a really good ROI from them, and it's something that they can demonstrate and show. So we tend to take more of a scientific approach, grab that data, And I guess for a lot of major leagues, Nielsen is where they anchor off the pricing because they can calculate the impressions, and then they decide on the price based on the impressions and the reports that they get back from these major marketing agencies. Yeah.
And thank you for that. I was going to say, and so the second question is kind of related. When you look at APRU, and it's a collection of 50 some odd universities, 2.5 million students, where do you think that they could elevate in terms of the sponsorship opportunity? Like, what would you say would be APRU's sort of next steps?
Yeah, I think, definitely, as Sean mentioned before at NUS, was that, a lot of brands are really interested in university and collegiate leagues, right? And I think they're not that many here or even around the world, right? And particularly Asia, because this is where I'm based out of and where I see the most. Like here in Hong Kong, I don't think there is even one collegiate league for any esports here, right? So, I mean, we are looking to start some of that with Wild Rift. But also, I guess it's a byproduct of the students working together, because I think gaming has always been about community. It's always been about playing together. And that's why we played League. That's why we played Overwatch. That's why we played, StarCraft 2, is because we get to play with our mates. And I think at university level, if there are more collegiate programs, I definitely know in the US, there's probably a lot stronger focus. We've seen, NCAA equivalents of esports tournaments there. But definitely, like, I think with the students, if they take the initiative, I think broadcasting is an option that you could do. And even if it's not perfect, that's fine. It's testing it out. And I think a lot of the schools have great media and entertainment and marketing divisions that they can kind of work together with the students to create a collegiate league. I think, obviously it's impossible to do sort of Asia to Europe to US type leagues, but having these kind of regional competitions and tying that and working with the publishers and working with brands, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I can definitely tell everyone that there's definitely a lot of appetite for brands. It's just that there needs to be some work done with branding it, making sure that there's appropriate broadcast, there's a format that's tied to, whether it be the professional scene or outside the professional scene times, to create that consistency. And then there's definitely opportunity to do within there. So, I mean, I'm happy to help out if that's something that you guys need some help with to explore a little bit further. But I can definitely tell you that our conversations, that many brands are very interested in collegiate side and they want to do more. It's just a matter of probably not enough awareness from their side of what's happening. And, are there regional competitions? Is it very much locally focused? But, just putting those ideas in front of them will be very powerful. So I think it's more just a question of, just organizing it. And I think it's definitely very doable. And then, first couple of times to do it, you may not get sponsored straight away. But I think just at least collecting that data, having that data, and then going back to them and saying, hey guys, we've got this audience, then you're going to be able to definitely do that. So, but if any of the guys are interested and need some help starting that up, I'm definitely happy to share my time or the team of our partnerships team a little bit, just to give you guys a little bit of guidance and ideas and how to structure some of those things for sure, no problems.
Yeah, and on top of that, I can share some of my experience when I was working at Blizzard back then. So you may be surprised when a brand that approach us for potential partnership, the first thing that they really ask is, do you have something related to collegiates? So yeah, you feel surprised of that, because in their mind, they're actually planting a seed there, and then essentially the student there will grow up and they remember the brand in their mindset. Exactly. So that's the potential of collegiate level. And thank you very much, Sean, today for the panel discussion and sharing a lot of different ideas. And I hope you all get the ideas of how to get a sponsorship, because you'll be starting the breakout session for the discussion very soon. But before that, I would like to invite all of you to turn on your camera. And we have some students on site joining us, and let's have a good photo together before we send you guys to the breakout sessions.